honor to introduce Reverend Douglas Craig, and he's going to talk about the dark night of the soul on the threshold of a dream. And I'm going to leave this book here, up here, because you're stronger than me and you can.
Okay. There you go. Story, it reminded me of, we were talking about the light at the end of the tunnel. So it reminded me a story about, it's about perspective and how you see things. So you got 4 people, all men. So you got 3 of them are standing on the railroad tracks looking into this long dark tunnel, or so they say, and the pessimist says, yeah, there you are, nothing but a long dark tunnel. The optimist says, well, you can see a faint light there, and there'll be a light coming. The realist says, hey, gentlemen, it doesn't matter about the tunnel. It'll be a light coming because there's a train there. All had their own opinion. They all saw it their way, right? Then there's the 4th guy, and he's the engineer driving the train, and he's wondering what the hell those 3 idiots are doing standing at the tracks. Right? So really, it's all about your position and how you see things, right? And who's right? Everybody. I always tell people, don't worry, you always get to be right. That's not the problem or the concern. The only concern is what do you want to be right about? So, with that being said, I got the funny part out of the way. Let's join together for an opening little meditative treatment. So as we join together in consciousness, we do so uniting our individuality with a higher idea that we call the source or God, knowing that that higher idea isn't external, it's internal. Because this one power, this one presence, and this one life is circumference nowhere and center everywhere. And so we are open and receptive to learning a deeper understanding of some of the things that happen to us on our journey called life. Life is a journey of enrichment and growth of the individual and the soul. And the soul's purpose here is to learn, grow, and expand. And our purpose is to go along and just enjoy the journey and not fight with it. So I'm open and receptive here today as I declare it for myself and for each one that there is a new awareness and a new understanding of this dark night of the soul that brings to each here a different awareness of self in relationship to some of the experiences of the past, present, and of the future. So with that being declared and spoken, we go forward with anticipation and excitement, knowing that all is good, all is God, all is thanks, and so it is. So has not everybody heard of the dark night of the soul? Yeah, it's a kind of a buzz thing that's going around. So I want to just park it over here for a minute. I want to go back to my last trip here. My last trip was talking about hell in the hallways. And that was the process of change and transformation. And there's the, part of always letting go, and always the stuff of the newness. But then there's that what we call the hell in the hallways. And generally that's always there to one degree or another, but every now and again, it's really a good kicker. I know a few people in here have had it, and it's called the dark night of the soul. Now, I'm not going to bore you with my stories. I've got a few of them. I just recently had one. So it's not about my story or your story, because the thing that one must understand is you cannot compare your experience of the dark night of the soul to anybody else's, because it's impossible, because it's really deep and it's really personal to just you. So if you hear everybody going through and all of this and you're trying to, well, that doesn't sound like me. Well, it ain't going to be you. Only you's going to be you. So let's put that in the nutshell and start there. Most people think this is a modern, new agey type of deal. No. The Dark Night of the Soul was a poem written by a Catholic priest who is imprisoned by his fellow monks because he was involved in what they call the cogeneration of the Catholic Church, which is changing some of the old ways into new ways of doing it from within, not without. And they thought his ideas were radical, so they chucked him in the prison. He went on later to write this poem called The Dark Night of the Soul while he was there, and went on later to do such great work within of actually changing some of the bizarre ideas that he became a saint. And his name is St. John of the Cross. You could look him up, the 1500s. He's a Spanish poet. Okay? Always remember, no matter where you are, every sinner has a future. And no matter who it is, or St. John of the Cross, every saint has a past. Okay? And so the church in those days believed that what happened was God withdrew his power from man and his presence from man and made him suffer through the senses until he come to the awareness that there had to be more, and invited God and begged him to come back in his life. St. John of the Cross said, no, that's not the way it is. And he wrote The Dark Night of the Soul, which comes in two parts. I just want to read a little bit about the modern interpretation of it. She said, the lady that did it, was the best one I found of the, I don't know how many I looked at. She said that the dark night is called that, the journey, because darkness represents the hardships and difficulties the soul meets in detachment from the world and reaching the light of the union with the Creator. So it's a lot more than just change. Okay? And if you want to ask anybody about it, ask the caterpillar. What happens in that cocoon, it ain't pretty. Pretty messy, that's about it. But the beauty that comes out the other side is incredible. Okay? And that's the main thing here about this dark night. St. John of the Cross, what he said in two different parts, okay? So this just isn't one part. And the gift I was given over this last process I've been going through was to actually see the separate parts of it. Doesn't make me excited or feel any damn better about it or make it any easier. No, don't think about that. It just brought it into a place where I can understand that and relate it to some of the major experiences that I had before that I didn't understand. It's all starting to make clarity now, and that was the gift I got out of it. Every dark night, no matter what you go through, always look for the gift and rise like the phoenix from the ashes. Because there's always a gift. I don't recommend that we have to go through that, but that's part of spiritual growth and learning. So the first part and the big part that he called the night on the purification of the senses. The night of the senses, and that's the purification of the senses. So that's the realm of your physical emotions and feelings. And then the second and more intense of the two stages is the purification of the spirit. So that's all that tarnished stuff that we've kind of accepted and believed that is caked around the purity of our essence, the essence of our purity, which is spirit, and distorted things. And so as that is pulled away in this physical experience, it's a different kind of pain, okay? Not like the feelings. If you're going through a transformation, which is the dark night where you got both of them, you'll have the intense human feelings, but then there'll be another pain that you can't explain. Just can't explain it. And you can have it, you can know you got it, and you can talk to somebody about it, but you just can't get the words to explain how that's different than the other, okay? So don't bother trying. They're just two totally different things, but when you get them together, it's a real crack kicker, okay? St. John of the Cross said, "In the twilight of life, God will not judge us upon our earthly possessions and human successes, but on how well we loved." His motto, "Strive to preserve your heart in peace. Let no event of the world disturb it. The endurance of darkness is the preparation for great light." The greatest gift that we can do for ourselves and anybody that we care about and the contribution to the world is to seek inner peace within inside ourselves. And there's a lot of different reasons that people are given this challenge and a lot of different ways it's presented. I got a different way that I have to deal with it. I cannot get stressed out because of this thing I got from the concussions I had. Because if I do, it gets really bad and I get really whacked out. But if I stay calm, peaceful, centered, and poised, I'm okay. Do you know how hard that is when I'm dealing with an idiot? Then I have to realize, well, if I get into that space dealing with the idiot, then the idiot's in the mirror. Another story, we'll get into that. Some of you may have heard of Joseph Campbell. He was considered the North American's most profound authority on mysticism and mythology in the world. And by the way, if you ever seen the first 3 series of the Star Wars, right? He was living with George Lucas making those, so that's why it's this stuff. He said, "The dark night of the soul comes just before revelation." Remember when I was going through that hell in the hallways, I was saying, you can't have a breakthrough till you have a breakdown. And the breakdown is letting go of the old that doesn't serve you anymore. Doesn't matter. It could be and it comes out in this way, in all kinds of ways. Death, relationships, business failures, blah, 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 blah. Whatever you need to let go, if you need to let go of all of it, then it all goes. Try that on for size. I did. Not fun, but it works. When everything is lost and all seems darkness, then comes the new life and all that is needed. All through mythology, no matter what, it's always letting go and breaking down that past, riding through the darkness, and then seeking the gift. And that and much more is given to you on the other side. People say, "Oh, do you think I could go through that experience, one of those ones that you did, Reverend Doug?" Yeah, go ahead if you want, but I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't do it again. I don't give a damn how much growth I'm going to get. I won't volunteer for that. You have to be nuts. Thomas Moore, okay? Care of the Soul, Soulmates, and a really good read is The Dark Nights of the Soul. He's probably one of the foremost as a psychotherapist and a former monk, modern day people to write on this. He says, "I see a dark night as a period of transformation. It's more like a stage in alchemy than an obstacle to happiness." Now, alchemy in the old days was making gold out of, all kinds of other stuff and making potions and that. But alchemy, in the spiritual sense, is a process of inner transformation and self-realization using the symbolic language of alchemy as a metaphor. So it's a metaphorical thing. It's about purifying one's consciousness, moving beyond limiting beliefs, striving for enlightenment, and it often involves recognizing and releasing negative patterns. Isn't that what it's all about, eh? Letting go of the past. Transcending the ego. Oh, yeah. And you know, if you've got a strong ego, that's good, long as you got it in its right place. If you don't, it's going to be, well, if you're in this, you'll get it into the right place. It's just like tenderizing meat that's tough. You just keep pounding it, and eventually it softens up. Does anybody feel like that? That they're like that meat that needs to be pounded sometimes? Yeah. So it's transcending the ego and ultimately realizing one's full potential. Because you see, the full potential's all there that we can do. It's just waiting for us to get rid of what isn't true about us. Then that truth can operate. So we're going to talk about the night of the senses and the purification. How I could talk to it about the best is that's what my program, the Transformation Guide, does. It just deals with working through the night of the senses and how to be able to do that at the feeling level and how to validate yourself. Ernest Holmes said that the divine mind is infinite. It contains all knowledge and wisdom, but before it could reveal its secrets, it must have an outlet. The outlet we shall be compelled to supply through our own receptive mentalities. What we draw from it, we must draw through the channels of our own minds. It's there, but we have to provide the outlet. That's what Emerson said, we're both an inlet and an outlet for God. So we got to provide that channel. It's up to us. Anybody ever heard of Carl Jung? Well, let's hear what Carl Jung says about this. He's just a psychiatrist, psychotherapist, psychologist, and founded the modern school of analytical psychology. So if anybody says, well, you guys are way off over there, well, let's bring it back to Carl Jung. Huh? He said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Did you hear that? People, this is true, will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. Isn't that true? I don't even want to get into it. We could have a 5-day workshop on that, how we avoid. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Pretty interesting. I like some of the stuff that I found when I was doing this. Then I'll go back to Dr. Holmes again. He said that discord, misery, and unhappiness are the result of a misuse of our true nature, the result of ignorance, and ignorance of the law excuses no one from its effects. But knowledge clothes us in the seamless robe, while wisdom puts on the ring of completion on her finger, and understanding feeds us with the fat of the land. I like that, the misuse of the law, right? Everybody like the law, electricity. It's beautiful. We just plug it in and it gives us great things, but you can misuse electricity. Has anybody ever misused electricity? I'll bet you haven't done what I have. 10 years old, Mom's got a lamp, curious, unscrew the light bulb. What would happen if I stuck my tongue in there? Well, I didn't get it all the way in before dark. And when I was able to get off the floor about 10 minutes later, and kind of got my senses back, what was going on, I realized that I wouldn't do that again because that was a misuse of the law of electricity. it didn't come to me quite that clearly, but I knew the same thing. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't excuse you, just no matter how smart you are, if you're going to do that, don't try it, please. You know, I mean, take my word for it. Okay? And so when I tell one of the great things, the most profound thing that was given to me on my journey for my program was a pendulum. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Lots of people here when I was in Red Deer said, "Oh, Reverend Doug, you wouldn't believe how good things are. It's just wonderful." I said, "Enjoy it, it won't last." And then, you know, a little later, a month or so later, "Oh, Reverend Doug, you wouldn't believe how shitty things are. Everything's terrible, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Enjoy it, it won't last." Because you see, no matter how good things are, it don't last. It don't matter how bad things are, it don't last. You know, some last longer than others, but you see, what people don't understand that is the basic fabric of how the universe works, why we even have this idea of good and bad. It's called polarity, energy. For anything to be distinct in the universe, which is everything, it has to have its own unique energy field to support it. The form. We call it aura. You can go after and stand that far away from someone, put your hand up and get closer, then you'll feel them. Okay? It's your aura. Every energy field has a polarity. Doesn't mean one side's better than the other, it just works that way. Over here I'm wonderful. If I'm wonderful, it's got to go over there when I'm not. Tick tock, tick tock. Next time I come up, and I'll be doing my program up again in the new year, redesigned, ready to go. So you want to come and get that one. And the other one I always teach people is that this is the thing that we have there, is moving through blocks on the journey. No matter how wonderful we are, we're going to reach blocks. And what most people don't know is those blocks that you reach wouldn't be there if you hadn't chosen to do what you're doing. If you chose to do something else, those blocks wouldn't be there. So the blocks are part of the journey, because if they weren't, they wouldn't be there and you'd be doing something else. You might have blocks there too, but something to know, something to learn, and something to release. So that's part of what the night of the senses is. The purification of the senses is getting rid of a lot of these negative self-beliefs about ourselves. Now, the dark night, or the night of the spirit, the purification of the spirit, much different. I can tell you, I will share my latest revelation when I'm finished and solidified going through it, because it's pretty freaking scary and pretty deep for me. But it's probably one of the more greater learning experiences I've ever had. And I'll talk about it when I'm done it. However, what this means, Thomas Moore said, is the dark night is more than a learning experience. It's a profound initiation into a realm that nothing in the culture so preoccupied with external concerns of material success prepares you for. Do you think, when I'm sitting in the center on the third Sunday in January 1980, and the voice said, "Doug, you're going to enjoy being a minister"? And I'm going, no, how could that be? I might be going to prison in a couple of months. I'm looking at 2 to 5. I'm still in the gang. I'm still all of this. How can I do something like that? And then the voice says, "Doug, you're going to enjoy being a minister." I said, okay, well, if that's what I got to do to fulfill my commitment to be of service, then I have to be shown. But how bizarre is that? You got to be prepared to listen to that And how bizarre it is doesn't matter. In fact, the more bizarre it is, the more powerful it is. So during the dark night, this is it. There is no choice but to surrender control. Give in to the unknowing and stop and listen to whatever signals of wisdom might come along. They will. Not maybe what you like or what you suspect, but they will. Because when you're at that level, the Spirit is always there to guide you to the next step. Because the hurt there, I can only put it into one song that I like, that I use a lot at memorials, and it's called The Rose by Bette Midler. And it's like, the best thing I could say is, love is like a razor that leaves your soul to bleed. Have you heard that? She's talking about the dark night of the soul. Okay? So when you listen to that, listen to all of the other stuff, but listen to that way, because it's different. I can't explain it. I can't. No words for it. Thomas Moore said, the dark night may be profoundly unsettling, offering no conceivable way out except perhaps to rely on pure faith and resources far beyond your understanding and capability. Eh? That's why we teach this here. It comes to you, the most bizarre stuff, but it's what you need to do. The dark night calls for a spiritual response. The senses is physical. This is spiritual, not a therapeutic one. It pushes you to the edge of what is familiar and reliable, stretching your imagination about how life works and who or what controls it. The dark night serves the spirit by forcing you to rely on something beyond human capacity. It can open you up to new and mysterious possibilities. So that's the I surrender part, eh? And anybody been there where you just can't figure it out what to do and you gotta just turn it over? You just don't know what? We've all been there, and that's your own individual one. Some of them have been really tough, and you go through the feelings, but you still got that other one. That one that is just there that you don't know what to do with or what. It's just, that's the spiritual part, and you get your coaching from your practitioners and your prayer work and your people, because there is nothing that I've done or seen or heard of or investigated that tells me how to make it go away. It does on its own time, but one must do the proper spiritual work to assist it. Okay? If I get a way to do it, it's easy and all that, you know what, I'll bring it up and tell you. Okay, so what else have I got here? Oh, I got two more things. Always remember, no matter whether it's the dark night of the soul, or just the purification of the senses, or the purification of the senses and the purification of the spirit, any time changes upon you, no matter how small or how intense it is, always seek the gift. And most people go, I already got the gift. No, you haven't. You won't know about the gift when you go through that for a few years after. You'll get lots of other ones. Wow, this is great. But then there'll come the time you have a realization about exactly what you got from that. Okay? And that's why I've been able to create all the neat things that I do. So I got 3 examples here. This man had a horrible, horrible family situations to deal with. Really stressed him out. Then he was a leader, and he took his country into war with each other internally. And he said, you know, the man was Abraham Lincoln. Check out, I'm not talking about his family situation too. It's like, you think yours is tacky. Have a look at his. And, you know, he's got that war going on, and he said, if there's a worse place than hell, I'm in it. And that's where it took him, right to that place, eh? But he stuck with it. He went through the dark night of the soul, and he emerged as a leader, one of the most profound leaders we've ever had in North America. Okay? And this dark night was what his leadership grew out of. This man, well, his actual dark night was imprisonment. Not a mood, but he teaches how to deal with the dark night. He said, don't waste your time in illusions and wishes. By the way, we're not talking a few years like St. John of the Cross. This was 25 in prison. He said, don't waste time in illusions and wishes. Take it on. Keep your sense of worth and power. Keep your vision intact. Let your darkness speak and give its tone to your bearing and expression. 25 years. Then he got free and became the president of his country, Nelson Mandela. Then there was a lady, young gal called Maya Angelou. And she was an example of the dark night leading into a transformative presence in the world. She went from not speaking for 5 or 6 years as a child out of the guilt and the wounds of abuse to reciting the inaugural poem for Bill Clinton at his presidency, inspiring millions to make something out of their own dark nights. In all of her public appearances, she showed both the pain, as they say, and the joy that shaped her mission in life. She carried her pain throughout her life, and yet her joy seemed to increase with her impact on men and especially women around the world. Very powerful people, but they didn't get it from any textbook, folks. This ain't academic. And we all go through the same thing, each and every one of us. And it all has a bearing on our own eternal greatness. And I'm going to close and I'm going to leave you with these words. Comes from an album, a song from an album that was put out by a group called the Moody Blues. The album was called On a Threshold of a Dream, 1969. And the song was written by Graham Edge, and it's called The Dream, but only it's music, but it's recited as a narrative. It's not a song, it's done as a narrative to music. You've got to listen to it. And tell me if this is not what we're talking about. When the white eagle of the north is flying overhead, and the brown, reds, and golds of autumn lie in the gutter dead, remember then, with summer birds, with wings of fire playing, come to witness spring's new hope, born of leaves decaying. As new life will come from death, love will come at leisure. Love of love, life of life, and giving without measure. Gives in return a wondrous yearn of a promise almost seen. Live hand in hand, and together we'll stand on the threshold of a dream. And so it is. Whee! Look at that.